Today, we stand at the exact moment when one of the most powerful empires in human history breathed its last breath. The Qin dynasty, which had forged the first unified Chinese empire, standardized writing, currency weights, measures, and built the Great Wall and a national road system, collapsed not on a bloody battlefield against a rival state, but in the quiet, trembling surrender of its last ruler in the capital city of Xianyang. This is not a story of grand battles or heroic last stands. It is a story of systemic rot, political betrayal, popular fury, and a fateful decision that closed the book on 15 years of absolute Qin rule. To understand why Liu Bang's entry into Xianyang is the undisputed marker of Qin's total demise, we must rewind to the final days of a regime that once terrified all of China. When Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor, died in 210 BCE, during a tour of his empire, the foundation of the Qin state began to crumble from within. His trusted eunuch, Zhao Gao, conspired with Prime Minister Li Si to falsify the imperial edict, forcing the rightful heir Fu Su to commit suicide, and placing the weak, easily manipulated Hu Hai on the throne known to history as Qing Shi, the second emperor. What followed was 2 years of unbridled tyranny. Zhao Gao eliminated political rivals through mass executions. Li Si was tortured and put to death by cruel means. Taxes and corvée labor were doubled to fund endless construction projects, and any dissent was met with immediate brutal punishment. The Qin legal system, once a tool of unification, became a machine of oppression, with harsh punishments applied to even minor offenses. By 209 BCE, the pressure exploded. A group of conscripted peasants led by Chen Sheng and Wu Guang rebelled in Daxiang, shouting the legendary cry, "Our kings and nobles born by nature." This small uprising ignited a wildfire across China. Former nobles of the 6 conquered states rose up, peasant armies swelled by the tens of thousands, and the Qin army, stretched thin fighting rebels on multiple fronts, began to fracture. Amid the chaos, 2 leaders emerged to challenge Qin rule. Xiang Yu, a fierce noble warrior from the former Chu state, with unmatched military genius, and Liu Bang, a former low-ranking Qin village guard from Pei County, who had gathered a band of followers and joined the anti-Qin forces. The rebel alliance made a solemn pact: whichever general first captured Xianyang, the Qin capital, would be crowned king of Guangzhong, the heartland of the Qin Empire. Xiang Yu chose to fight the main Qin army led by Zheng Han, winning the brutal Battle of Julu, where he destroyed the last elite Qin forces, a victory that crippled Qin's military power, but left him bogged down in eastern battles. Liu Bang, however, took a calculated risk. He avoided direct confrontations with remaining Qin troops, marched west along a quiet route, rallied local disaffected Qin officials and peasants to his side, and advanced steadily toward Xianyang, with minimal bloodshed. By late 207 BCE, Liu Bang's army reached the gates of Xianyang, a city that had once been the invincible center of a continent-spanning empire, now paralyzed by fear and infighting. Inside Xianyang, the Qin court was in its death throes. Zhao Gao, who had terrorized the court for years, realized the empire was lost and murdered Qin Shi, hoping to negotiate with the rebels by placing a new figurehead on the throne. He chose Ziying, a nephew of Qin Shi Huang, a man known for his wisdom and caution. But Ziying refused to be a puppet. After just 5 days on the throne, he lured Zhao Gao into the palace and executed him, along with his entire clan, wiping out the man who had destroyed Qin from within. Ziying also made a critical, symbolic move. He abandoned the title of emperor and reverted to king of Qin, a silent admission that the unified Qin empire was already dead. Yet even with Zhao Gao gone, Ziying had no army to defend Xianyang, no loyal subjects left to fight, and no hope of turning back the rebel tide. Every road leading to the capital was cut off, food supplies ran low, and the people of Xianyang, who had once feared Qin rule, now secretly welcomed the approaching rebel army. On a cold day, in the 10th month of 207 BCE, Liu Bang's army halted outside Xianyang's city gates. Ziying made the only choice left to him. He dressed himself in white funeral clothes, rode in a plain white horse-drawn cart, without ornaments, bound his own hands, and carried the imperial seal, jade tallies, and sword of Qin Shi Huang, all symbols of Qin's imperial authority, out of the city to meet Liu Bang. In full view of his soldiers and the people of Xianyang, Ziying knelt and surrendered unconditionally to Liu Bang. This single act was not a temporary truce. It was the complete, irreversible transfer of sovereign power from the Qin royal house to the rebel forces. Liu Bang did not execute Ziying, nor did he allow his soldiers to loot the palace. Instead, he issued 3 simple laws that would win him the hearts of the Qin people. First, execution for murder. Second, punishment for assault. Third, punishment for theft. All the harsh, oppressive Qin laws were immediately abolished. Liu Bang's army occupied the palace and the city peacefully, taking control of Qin's administrative records, maps, and population registers, securing the governance of the former Qin heartland. This moment is not just a military occupation. It is the legal and historical end of the Qin dynasty. Mainstream Chinese historiography, based on records of the Grand Historian, by Sima Tian, the most authoritative source on ancient Chinese history, clearly defines Ziying's surrender to Liu Bang and Liu's entry into Xianyang as the official termination of Qin rule. The Qin Empire, which had unified China in 221 BCE, after centuries of warring states, lasted only 15 years, one of the shortest major dynasties in Chinese history, yet one of the most transformative. Some might argue that the Qin ended when Xiang Yu later entered Xianyang, burned the palace and killed Ziying, but that is a mistake. Xiang Yu's actions came after the dynasty had already fallen. They were acts of vengeance against the dead regime, not the cause of its collapse. Liu Bang's peaceful takeover of the capital and the formal surrender of the last Qin ruler marked the moment when Qin sovereignty ceased to exist. The imperial institutions, the central authority, and the legal claim to rule all vanished. The second, Ziying handed over the imperial seal. The fall of Qin reveals a brutal truth about empires. They do not die from external invasion alone. They die from internal corruption, unaccountable power, and the betrayal of the people they claim to rule. Qin Shi Huang built a system of absolute centralization that relied on fear and force, but he failed to build legitimacy or compassion. His successors doubled down on oppression, turning a powerful governing machine into a tool of terror. Liu Bang's success came not from military might, but from understanding what the people wanted: an end to cruelty, fairness, and stability. His entry into Xianyang was not just a conquest. It was a rejection of Qin's tyrannical model, and the beginning of a new era for China. The Qin dynasty left an indelible legacy: the unified Chinese state, the bureaucratic system, and the infrastructure that would shape China for 2,000 years. But its collapse taught every future Chinese ruler a vital lesson: power, without the consent of the people, is destined to crumble. As we close this chapter, we see that Liu Bang's march into Xianyang is more than a historical footnote. It is the dividing line between the first imperial dynasty of China and the chaos of the Chu-Han contention that would follow. It is the moment when a peasant-born leader outmaneuvered a fading empire, and when a regime built on conquest and fear met its inevitable end. The Qin Empire rose like a storm, unified a fractured land, and fell just as quickly, all because it forgot that empires are built on people, not just power. If you enjoyed this journey into ancient China, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more epic history. See you next time.